and he weighs me down there, and it's an older gentleman, and he's kind of hobbling a little bit to get over to the chain, and he lets
You
it down,
jerk.
and I pull up, and I and I'm being friendly and say, hey, hi, how's it going? And he just starts kind of laying into us about how we can't have that chain there, and that we're not the only ones that hunt back there.
Oh.
And I diffuse the situation pretty quickly. And the guy's breath smells like he's been drinking. And
this segment of DoD TV is brought to you by Leupold, American to the core.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Drury Outdoors 100% Wild podcast. This is episode number 234. Via Zoom is Mr. Matt Drury.
What's up?
How are you?
Via live in studio is Mr. Tim Chelsvik.
The real deal.
Mr. Big Buck Killer, Mr. Saddle Hunter, Mr. Public Land Do-It-Yourself guy.
What other things can we throw into that hunt?
You are a cliche if I've ever heard one.
The man will not be put into a box. and
you know what? Hunting Public, they got nothing on you.
Right. I start a new brand called the Hunting Republic. So we wanted to hop in. So the show is a little late this week, and we apologize to everyone who cares about that. For everyone else, it's not a big deal. But we've kind of been grinding it out, trying to kill deer, and that's what's pushed our production schedule back a little bit.
And you have something to show for it. Congratulations. Let's hear about this.
Yes. So I killed a really good buck on public land. I was fortunate enough to be drawn for a St. Louis County. Actually, it's a managed hunt. St. Louis County opened up their parks, I think maybe 10 of their properties, to managed hunts managed by the Department of Conservation, because they're already doing that on their other conservation areas. But deer densities around the St. Louis metro area are just skyrocketing. It's an issue, and it's not only a health issue, but there's also an insurance aspect to it. So I put in for Greensfelder County Park, which is adjacent to a property that I've hunted for years. So I was pretty familiar with the terrain and went in there, and it's an earn a buck scenario. So obviously population control is their main management objective. So you have to take an antlerless deer before you can start hunting a mature buck. And so that's what I did. November 1st, I killed an antlerless deer. And then on the 2nd, that was Tuesday, I took a vacation day, and I'd seen good sign, because the other aspect of a managed hunt on these managed hunt grounds, conservation areas, and St. Louis County parks, you can't run trail cameras. So I had no intel other than I found good scrapes and good rubs on a bench, on kind of a bench cut trail. It wasn't a man-made trail. It was just a natural kind of part of the terrain that I had known from years past. I'd seen deer back in there from years before. And so I figured, the saddle gave me the flexibility to go in pretty light and low footprint with all my camera gear and set up right at that transition where there's a little bit of opening. But I felt like a trapper. Like trappers always talk about how it's kind of the next level of hunting, because you have to make that animal step right in that particular spot. The shooting lane I had, like the deer had to come out right at a particular point in the cedars for me to have a shot at him. I got in the tree around 3:30. I was seeing activity pretty much all afternoon, mostly young bucks chasing does that just weren't having it. And, but the bucks kept getting bigger as the evening went on, to the point where I had like probably 2.5-year-old 8-pointer. He was all kind of busted up. He came and bedded down within 15 yards of me, and it was getting towards last light, and I thought, man, this guy's gonna pin me down here. And it was just weird to have him bed down so close. But with the saddle, I don't know if it's the angle that you're leaning out. You look like a tree limb because you're kind of at a 45. I don't know what it is, but it seems like when I'm in a stand, they tend to profile me a little more so than when I'm in a saddle.
Sure.
And so this guy bedded down right in front of me, and I'm watching him, shooting footage of him, and it's getting closer to last night, and I think this is how the night's going to end. And then I hear footsteps behind me in the thick cedars coming, and the leaves are all really dry. And I'm figuring it's a doe, but I've learned from years past, just look, just in case. And I can see through the branches, it's a bigger bodied animal. It's a rack buck. And oh crap, I better start getting ready just in case. And the little deer kind of picked up on him. He'd been watching. He got up out of his bed and started to bristle up. And the buck that I ended up shooting walks to my right at probably 8 yards. And I'm trying to like shift the camera, zoom out, and all the things. And I had other cameras there. I just didn't have the time, because it's not only not wanting to get busted visually, but audibly, just moving with a deer that close. It's like, you just don't want to get heard.
And there's no sound, it's calm. It's, the end of the night like that. Like you hear every little movement.
And thankfully the thermals had kind of taken over, because the wind wasn't great all day, but the thermals had taken over, were kind of cascading down the hillside. So he was just on the uphill side of my tree. So that worked out really well. But it's like riding a line of just mere feet where my scent profile probably was landing. And he kind of comes in and sidles up, and they're both kind of eyeing each other up. And I was like, this needs to happen. I'm going to shoot this deer. It's crazy how it just feels so surreal when it's all coming together. You flip the record on the camera, and you're like, I'm going to draw. I'm going to do this. And
I'm a big boy.
Right. This might actually happen. I might actually know what I'm doing, or at least appear like it. And you saw the hit. I sent you a screen grab of it, or a screen record.
Looked great.
It looked great. And this is where DeerCast Track really helped out, because when I looked at the hit, I was like, I could probably go get that deer. In fact, I heard him go down, and I heard him make a real guttural, like lung damage kind of cough. I figured half hour tops, and I'll go get him. I got down out of the tree and looked at the arrow. Good blood on the ground. I checked DeerCast Track though. DeerCast Track said wait 3 hours, and that really surprised me.
What was it? The angle, or what was the reason?
It was a little farther back, and so it was like you probably clipped the back lobes of the lungs and the liver, and the angle that I was at was pretty steep. I mean, he was right there in front of me, real close. And that was surprising. Like, to see 3 hours, I was like, it just looked like a slam dunk. Jake Arvold came out, Josiah Durham came out, and they were going to help me do the recovery. And we put flashlights back there just to kind of see up in the woods. I didn't want to push it, because I was concerned, because DeerCast Track said 3 hours. I was like, man, it just gave me caution. Yeah. And we could see two eyes looking back in the darkness from about where I thought that deer would be. And it was heartbreaking. We went back, we hung out, we waited a total of 4 hours to go check on that deer, and he still had his head. We still saw eye shine back there.
Wow.
So I was like, I'm not going to do something stupid. Let's just back out. Coyotes may get him, but I don't want to force a mistake here. And we came back the next morning. He was dead in that exact spot. So that was him in the woods. But absent of DeerCast Track giving me that 3 hour, like that cautionary, it's not as great a hit as you maybe thought it was, I think I may have walked back in there and incidentally bumped him.
Yeah.
So I don't want this to sound like a commercial for DeerCast Track, but I just know, like, when you shoot a deer, it's so darn important that you recover him, and like your whole world hinges on that. And to have like another resource, because I showed you the screen record. I showed my buddies when they came out, and they were all like, we can go get that deer. That deer's dead. And it wasn't.
I wonder if it had anything to do with him being so close in your angle. Because you know, entry versus exit, and it looked like you 12 ringed him to me.
Yeah. The angle it wasn't super low on his body. It was still in the brown hair, but it definitely did hit liver. He had liver blood coming out on the exit side. So yeah, I mean, just a crazy how it all kind of comes together. But then you're questioning, like, well, is it really going to come together? Am I going to recover him? And,
yeah.
But very, very thankful And I was talking, Sean Lundy called me this morning, and he was talking about the hunt and just asking me some questions. And one of the things I told him was I hope that this hunt gives our team members a little more credit in the eyes of maybe other people that watch hunting media, because sometimes I think we get the stereotype that that we hunt a certain way, like we're the rich guys hunting club, but our guys, like, they all have jobs, they all work really hard to make sure they have good places to hunt, and they work hard to get at their deer. And this is just another example of, like, there's a lot of work that goes into this. These are not easy hunts.
Yeah, Scott and I were just talking about that in the blind I think it was yesterday afternoon. And it's just like, man, we've been getting our butts handed to us, and it's just like, it's a lot of work, and you can totally grind it out and think you're putting in the right moves and still have nothing to show for it. And it's awesome that you were able to go in on public ground and go in there and make it happen in a short amount of time.
For $200.
You only hunted there like 2 times, right? For the doe, and then this time?
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, in fact, in the footage, I think I cut this, but it'll probably make it in the longer version of the hunt. I say this is a very low percentage, low probability hunt. Everything has to happen the way that I hope it will. Otherwise, I either won't see anything, or we'll see something that I won't have a shot at them. So
now, because it's a management hunt like that buck tag doesn't actually count against your 2 Missouri tags, does it?
No, it does. It's a bonus. It's a bonus. So I still have two buck tags in my pocket ready to roll.
Saddle up and giddy up.
Right. It's such a weird feeling, but it's so great. And I only had that tag for the month of November. So I was like, I really want to make sure that I maximize this, because I can hunt on my other 2 tags for the rest, through January 15.
Yeah.
So it's just a lot of wins. And hope, the other thing I hope is that, I know a lot of people say, I just don't have a good place to hunt. But sometimes I wonder if they've really looked into the public lands that are available. Like, it takes a little research, and you might have to burn some shoe leather to get in a little farther. But there, in a lot of states, there is really good public ground, and there's more and more resources for people to, technology resources for people to access that information, to know where to go. But usually it requires some prep. Like, I had to put in for this hunt back in June.
Yeah.
And you're not really thinking deer season in June necessarily, but you got to do some planning, you got to do some prep. But there are some resources out there to get on decent public ground.
Pretty awesome, man. Congratulations.
Thank you. And we were just talking before we hopped on just how tired both you and I are, because I know it's not for lack of effort that you have not killed yet.
No, it isn't. I mean, this is the toughest season I can remember in a long time. And what's tough about it is it's not, we're putting in the hours. Like we've hunted, October was warm. So it's not like we totally just like hunted so much in October because I didn't want to burn the spots, and I was kind of monitoring my cell cameras, but we hunted quite a bit still, especially towards the end there. And then, obviously, here in the last 10 days, I don't know, 5-10 days, we really start putting in a lot of hours. And, I usually don't do this so soon, but we've basically been doing some all day sits. We're jumping around from spots, but we're more or less hunting all day, trying to catch some midday movement, because this weather, the moon sucks really bad right now, but the weather got real good on us. And if you look at that 10-day and DeerCast, looking ahead, at least for our area, it's going to get super warm right as my favorite time of the season hits, which is kind of like the 7th through the 10th or 11th. And it gets real warm kind of 6th through the 10th. So I think it could be tough. And a lot of the best action might happen at night there. But so in lieu of that, or I guess ahead of that, I'm trying to kind of grind it out and make it happen while the weather is really great and the conditions are, we got some really cold temperatures, and, so hunting middays and thinking, well, maybe we'll catch, some mature bucks before they find the first available doe. And it just, I don't know, we're not having so much luck so far. And, I have 2 different properties that I'm hunting, 2 different leases. One of them is the Ellsbury lease that I've hunted for a long time, and we kind of know those deer, know their habits, but we just don't really have. We have some mature bucks there, but nothing that I'm really excited about, I guess.
Yeah.
That's probably a bad way to look at it, but I'm just, there's a certain caliber of deer that I'm looking for. And we don't really have many of those, even though we have mature bucks on that property. So I've been,
I was going to say, they seem to know your habits too. Cause
yeah.
I saw the cell cam pictures that you put up of, is that Scar that showed up?
We think it may be Scar. Yeah. The deer that Scott had grazed his back with a rage broadhead last year, I think in October. And, he needs to go. And I should probably just say, you know what, let's quit hunting. Let's get Scott on a deer over in Ellsbury because that deer has been visible. Whereas we have some really nice bucks. I mean, some big deer.
Scary big deer.
Over in this other property, this other lease. And so that's why I've been focused on it. But that property has been just pounded over the last 20 years based on what I've heard from the new landowner and from locals. And you always hear about the group of guys that are the bad neighbors. Well, this property that I am now on, they're
the bad news bears.
Everybody else was managing for big deer, and these guys were just, there was, I think, 15 to 20 of them on, it's like, say, 350 acres roughly. Goodness. And they were just shooting everything that walked. And, you can't go 100 yards on this place and not see some old constructed tower blind, It's very interesting. But all that being said, there's not a ton of deer on it, but there are a ton of mature bucks based on the buck to doe ratio. Like I'm shocked how many big deer are on this thing.
And they've all got PTSD.
They do, man. They are shell shocked. Like there's an easement that runs through the property, and there's a older couple that live at the very end of the property, past the property, and they drive through 2 or 3 times a day. And there's a lot of factors that make these deer nocturnal. And it's amazing. Even the best conditions, greats, the deer almost always wait until it's the last 5 minutes, and then they start popping out. And my cell cameras, Scott and I are there, and we're in several spots where we can see a country mile.
Yeah.
And, and then I got enough cell cameras up there. Like I get pinged. And a lot of times as soon as we leave, boom, 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 the mature bucks, they pop out and they get after it. And so it's been an education to say the least. And, we're doing everything I think we should be. This property is kind of a gigantic, 110 acre field, more or less, that's got timber, and it's the ridge. The field is the ridges,
sure.
And everything just falls off. And so I haven't been going down into these ravines, and hunting, and that's definitely where they're bedded at and where they're hanging out. And I got some sets that are just into the timber, not very far. And I've got a couple of blinds over, some failed food plots that are just kind of starting to pop up, and it just isn't, the strategy hasn't paid off for us yet. And we're on one deer that, he's a big boy, and there's 3 or 4 that, I'd shoot all day long. They're good quality bucks.
Yeah.
And we've had encounters with 2 of them, 2 of the 3, not the big boy, but 2 of the other deer that I would shoot, just long distance. I'm not interested in these deer. They're just looking real hard right now for a doe. Sure. And I just haven't been on them. So anyways, it's been tough, but we're grinding it out, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to the tough part. So hopefully we can make it happen yet.
Here's what we'll do. We'll get another saddle. I'll get my saddle. I'll grab the camera. You and me, we'll saddle up. We'll go out there, and we'll go guerrilla style in there and go after them.
Giddy up. Honestly, I do think you could kill one of these deer that way by going down into, these ravines, and hunting kind of where I think they're at. But it's just so tough with the way we do it, and lock-ons, and it can be done. And I know guys succeed that way, but it just kind of goes against our general strategy of hammering down in there and potentially busting out a bunch of things to get back into it. So
sure.
But I can tell you this, as I sit there and see nothing over and over and over, I can promise you that thought has entered my mind several times.
Michael Scott says desperate times require, or desperate times often result in the most quickest results.
I would think if desperate times create desperate men.
Well, that too. That's also true. And I know like a lot of people that are listening right now still, they've not punched a tag yet. And it's so demoralizing because you're working hard, then you're coming home and they're still like, you still get your responsibilities at home to fulfill, and you got your job to, those responsibilities to fill. And you really got to watch to make sure that hunting doesn't become a chore, because boy, it really can. And I had that kind of internal conversation with myself before the season started, because I hunted pretty hard last season, and I think I neglected some of my like other duties as a dad and husband, and I didn't want to do that this year. So Tuesday, when I had that day off, I hunted the morning. And I texted my mom. I was like, "Hey, you want to get lunch today? Like, I'm home midday, midweek. I'm home. Let's get lunch." So she came over. I cooked her. I pan fried some of the tenderloins from the deer I shot the night before. Had a nice lunch together. Caught up, and it was. And then I went out with my saddle, and I didn't kill myself because I was thinking about going down to my bourbon farm, driving an hour to get down there, all the work to get, and then coming home, and it was just. Like, I'm on a mission to kill a deer, punch this tag. And it's like, I'm going to try to take it easy here and try to enjoy this. And it's easier said than done, especially easier once you punch a tag.
Yeah.
But man, it's such a tough balance to keep, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. I hear you. Like, the emails are stacking up. As much as I try to keep up with it in a tree, is just some stuff you got to take care of in front of a computer. And, of course, the family side of it. Actually, today is my little girl's 5th birthday. So I got to take her to school this morning, and we're going to celebrate this evening. And, maybe a great day out, but it's also a great day to be with the kids and Miranda. So, sometimes you just got to step back. And so hopefully when we get back after it, things will turn around. Now, the forecast, like I said, that 10-day does not look great. And now when it does pick up is the 5 days kind of leading into the full moon, which I think is the 19th or 20th here in November, like the Missouri gun season, which I know not everybody here is in Missouri, but listening. But I think it's going to line up to be, an absolute slaughter during the Missouri gun season, because the weather gets right after a pretty big warm up, and the moon's getting right. So it could get really good. And honestly, I also feel like that might be when the mature bucks are getting, done with their first does and possibly looking for a second one. And so I don't know. I feel like it might be pretty good then.
Yeah. Here's hoping. And I always feel like if it's a good gun season, that's great for hunter recruitment, because I think most new hunters are probably coming in gun hunting. And so,
sure.
So
not great probably for the buck population of the state, but that's just part of it.
Yep.
And honestly, that's part of the pressure that I'm feeling, because there are, like, where I'm hunting, there's not a lot of bow hunters around us. And one of the neighbors, he had killed early on. And of course, Doug, the landowner, he killed early on. And so I kind of had this property to myself for now. And I kind of felt that pressure to try to get something done before the gun season, because frankly, like, I think that the bucks that I'm chasing are likely going to get killed by the neighbors during that period. But, and that's part of it, so I feel the pressure of trying to make something happen with my bow tag before gun season comes in. I was originally planning to go to Dad's place for gun season, which is kind of our tradition. And I don't know. I may have to rethink that and stick around and try to make something happen during the gun season if I haven't filled the bow tag yet. So
I always feel like my window of opportunity is before gun season. I don't have a whole lot of gun hunting pressure around me. Most of the places I'm hunting are more suburban. But I just like, I don't have a whole lot of great food sources. So late season for me is really tough. Like you're just trying to encounter them as they're doing the little bit of travel they'll do right before last light, or maybe midday or something. But it's really tough. So I feel like my season is really September 15th through November 14th or whatever gun season starts.
Yeah, I think in general, I think after the gun season in Missouri, it gets real tough until the late season if you have food. And then in Illinois, it's interesting because I've hunted over there for a few years. It seems to get real good during like Thanksgiving time frame, which is when it starts kind of sucking in Missouri, it feels like. But over there, it always seems to be pretty good around that period. And so there's, even into the beginning of December. But like their first gun season, man, I've always had bad experiences for deer movement during their first gun season because I think it's just getting pounded in general from the masses, and deer just kind of stop moving. But that second gun and the late muzz always seem to be pretty decent. So anyways, I was hoping to have a tag fit. It's like polar opposite season from last year's season. And it's funny how that we see that with our team members all the time, where like a guy maybe have the saddle on him, not the one you're using, but
not the helium saddle,
the donkey saddle, horse collar, and just having a horrible year. But then the next year they're lighting it up, and it kind of runs. It just, I don't know. It seems to run. Your luck runs in periods like that.
Yeah. And it's tough to compare year to year.
Yeah. So
we got the hammer dropped on us by some of our 100% Wild rack packers there in Facebook. For not having a show ready for him this week. But we are going to welcome some of our newer members.
Let's do it. All right. I see Kevin Hopping, Philip Jansen, Matt Hunt, John Hendricks, Mark Morans, Jeff Hendricks.
Heck yeah.
And so appreciate you guys jumping on. No females this time. What the heck?
I think we have had some newer members we're almost at 400 members. So
look at us. Not your favorite outdoor podcast that could.
Knife up. And then over on Apple Podcasts, the H-Man TV said, "We are 100% wild. I love hearing Terry on the podcast. He was right with his October 20, 21, and 22 prediction. Deercast was spot on too. Thanks, and keep up the great podcast." Thank you.
Appreciate it,
man.
Yeah. I was talking about, I did an interview last night in the Blind about this. It said that I feel like I need to dial back. I've never messed with my Deercast custom before because my Deercast prediction is pretty spot on my other properties, but I think here on this other lease that I'm going to have to dial back the Deercast custom to the pessimistic side a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, and some people have asked about what does custom do, and it's been a little confusing, but really it just kind of tweaks the algorithm to better reflect like, here's kind of the baseline, but maybe you've got a property that hunts a little tougher than another one. Well, then you probably want more pessimism in your Deercast forecast. So just slide it down a little bit. It's kind of a handy quick reference. Like when you're going through your properties and seeing like, oh, where should I spend my weekend? If your custom is set, then you just kind of, it's easier to see at a glance. You can see like, that property is probably not going to be the best one.
And this is a perfect example because we talk about it all the time. If you have intrusion, if you have, maybe it's a public piece, or maybe it's, neighbors, that you can't, that are kind of the X factor for your deer movement. That's the purpose of it. And conversely, maybe, I don't see this often, but maybe it's that the Deercast is too pessimistic for your property, and that your movement's better than what the prediction's given out. And in most cases, it's that it doesn't quite meet up to the prediction and the standards that are set there in the app. So, like in this case, I'll dial it back just slightly. It wouldn't be much because it's, the deer are there. I've talked to Scott about this a lot. If we didn't have the trail cameras, I would have swore this piece had 0 deer on it. But
because you're not laying eyes on them.
Exactly. And even the does, I mean, there's not a big doe population either. So in general, the population is pretty low, but here lately with this great weather, we finally started seeing some decent deer movement as far as the does are concerned, which can only give you hope that soon after the bucks will be behind them. But in general, I feel like if it's saying great on DeerCast, it's probably just good or okay on this piece.
Sure.
That would be the way to look at it.
You talk about intrusion on a property and what that does for the hunting. I didn't include this in the video of my kill from yesterday, but when we were doing the recovery yesterday morning, like 15 deer ran through the cedars just uphill from us, probably at 30 yards. Like, what is going on? Where are all these deer coming from? And then a little dog with a collar on it came running through, back and forth, zigzagging through the woods. Like, which way did they go, guys? And then 5 minutes later, a runner, which I hate runners. They screw everything up.
You are a runner.
Self-hate, self-loathing. This lady came through with her, her running outfit on, and she was just kind of like, I think she was setting up a course for an upcoming race event, but it's public land. She could be there, but she was zigzagging all around us. And Josiah and I are standing there with a dead deer, cameras going, and waving at her like, "Hey lady, hi, just so you know that we're here. You're not startled by us." She had her earbuds in. She couldn't hear us, I guess. She didn't notice us, but I could have been hunting that next morning, very likely, because it was a good spot. And if I didn't kill that night, I might have went back the next morning. And here was this lady running through. So intrusion, like there's just no way you can account for intrusion other than dial your custom back a little bit.
So I got 2 good stories from this piece about intrusion. Happened to me in the last 5 days, two of the 5 days. It wasn't that.
That'll run them out of there. Well, I think I heard a buck growl.
So we hunted all morning one morning, and this would have been probably early last week, and we hunted late into the morning, and so we decided to get down and grab a quick bite to eat, and go into town, grab a quick bite to eat.
Sure.
We had changed. We're at the trucks. And a truck drives by us. And I was looking down at my phone. I was sending an email or something. And Scott's like, "Did you see that?" And I look up and there's a guy drive by us. And I was like, geez, we got cameras on this road to know when people are coming and going.
Sure.
And so immediately Aaron Bennett, his camera picks up people coming and going. And he sends the group a text with a picture, and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm looking at this guy. It's a picture of the guy's truck." And so we follow him, and he goes we kind of lose it because this road goes back in there, and there are some people that live way back in there past our property. So it's like, oh, maybe he's going to visit this older couple. So we go get our food, and we come back. It took us maybe 10 minutes, and we come back and we meet kind of where the entrance of the property is. The new landowner had put up a chain there, and it says no trespassing, and it's not locked, but it's a chain that you got to physically get out and take up.
You can't accidentally go through it.
Yeah. So when we left to get our food, I put the chain up just to see what would happen, and if, we'll just see. And the chain was up, by the way, when we were hunting. And so he had taken the chain down. He come in. So our trucks meet right there where he met there at the chain link. And he weighs me down there, and it's an older gentleman, and he's kind of hobbling a little bit to get over to the chain, and he lets it down, and I pull up and I, and I'm being friendly and say, "Hi, how's it going?" And he just starts kind of laying into us about how we can't have that chain there, and that we're not the only ones that hunt back there. Oh. And I diffuse the situation pretty quickly. And the guy's breath smells like he's been drinking, and he's way old. He's probably in his mid 70s, I'd say.
Okay.
And
did his beard tickle too, or?
What's that?
Did his beard tickle you or?
Yeah. So I'm just apologizing. I say, hey, you know, I think the new landowner's trying to keep out trespassers. He's like, well, I have written permission to hunt 25 acres back there, and I've had it for the last 20 years, and you guys can't put this chain up here. And I said, yeah. I go, well, it's not locked, so you can still get back to your property. He's like, you can't put that chain there. So I gave him the land. He's asking about the landowner. I gave him the landowner's name. And turns out the landowner shows up right when, we're having this conversation. And I said, well, this is the landowner actually right here pulling up. And so he then talks to him, and we end up diffusing the scenario, the situation. And
through arm wrestling?
Yes, we arm wrestled on the hood of my truck.
A 70-year-old man.
He was surprisingly strong. But, you know, it was just it was an interesting encounter, but I told him, I said, hey, look, if you're back there, cause he just gun hunts, you know, and I said, hey, look, if you're here during gun season, if you ever need any help getting a deer out or anything like that, you see our trucks, feel free to come over and we'll be happy to help you, you know, and I'm just trying to be friendly. And so that encounter, it ended well. He was pretty upset with us at first, but it ended okay. So fast forward a couple days, and we're on the property, and Scott and I just got out of our morning hunt. And at this point, we're basically hunting all day. We're not eating, lunch. We're not stopping for lunch. We're hunting, not to mention working.
Yeah. Nothing stops.
So Aaron sends us a text, and it's another truck, different truck. And we're like, son of a gun, you know, like, because this has been happening a lot, but we hadn't been on the property when this happened. So like the landowner has sent police over to check out, the sheriff to check things out before. So we're on the property. So I say, okay, I see him coming. So we're on the tracker, and we're heading to set up a decoy for the afternoon hunt, and to put it out and then go put the tracker away. So we stopped the guy, and it's another older gentleman, and he's retired. And this time this guy gets out, and I say, hey, can I help you? You know, I'm just being nice, and can we help you? He's like, well, I've hunted this property for the last 20 years. I've heard there were a lot of changes here. I wanted to come out and take a look. And I said, well, you know,
can you give me a tour?
Hunting. I go, we're out here hunting today. And I'm whispering. He slammed his door. He's talking at the top of his lungs. And it just kind of shows you there's different hunters in the world.
Yeah.
And there's no, I'm not throwing stones at any of them, but this guy was a different hunter than how we hunt. And so then
successful.
I felt like he was a little tipsy, and I'm telling you, it wasn't 11:30. And he's like, hey, you guys want a beer? And I'm like, no.
Beer me 5.
I was like, we're hunting. You know, he looked at me like I'm dumb. I was like, yeah, so do you want a beer? So this lasted for 40 minutes in the very center of the property, talking at the top of his lungs. And well, Matt, he got in and out of the truck 3 times because he had to grab his phone. He wanted to show us pictures, and he slammed the door every time. I'm clearly whispering. Scott's clearly whispering, and he's talking at the top of his lungs.
Not picking it up.
No. And then he's asking about the old shack, and is it the stove still in there? And they used to shoot their guns while they slept in the shack, and they'd shoot their guns at night. And, you know, the old outhouse, you could kill a deer out of the outhouse. And I'm just like, oh my goodness. And so finally, you know, the conversation, I finally get out of it. I'm like, well, we're going to get back to hunting. And I am not kidding you. He went in the next 15 minutes. He drove his truck to every spot we had. Because we got cameras all over the place. He'd pull out, he'd turn around, and Aaron's like, what the hell is this guy doing? I was like, he's just a friendly old man. He offered us a beer, just checking the place out. I was like, wait, what can you do? You know, and the landowner's like, I hope you told him, you know, sternly that he can't do that anymore. It's like, man, I can't, you know, do that. I tried to imply that we're hunting hard, that we paid for this lease.
Yeah.
It's all you can do. You know, I'm not going to start an argument with an old man right there in the middle of the farm. You know, to his defense, he's hunted there his whole life, basically, it seems like. And he just, you know, he now no longer has the property. And I think that's something that happens more and more and more. And I'm sympathetic for it. We're the new leasee that came in that, you get a bad name for doing this stuff, but we paid good money for the lease and we're hunting hard and, it's tough, but, nonetheless, those are my two old man encounters in the last 5-10 days here.
This was the same property that the guy was cutting wood on during turkey season, isn't it?
Yeah, I did. That was a different guy. I haven't seen him since.
You might want to bring refreshments or snacks to entertain people as they stop by and just visit.
Have them at the front gate.
Yeah. Have some extra chairs, sit down, chill out.
What can you do? And so that I think that gives you a better insight as to why the deer are nocturnal. And I told Scott, I go, look, it's going to take 3 or 4 years for a whole new crop of deer to come in and grow up and be comfortable around that property. Because these deer are shell shocked.
Yeah. You're going to have to play long ball with that piece of ground. Jeez.
Yeah.
Well, and it also goes to show that just because you're not hunting public ground doesn't mean you're also not facing intrusion.
Yeah, it happens to a lot of people out there.
It happens everywhere. Yeah, in fact, the St. Louis County Park Rangers were trying to run down a guy that had parked on the private property that is adjacent to the Greensfelder County Park, because so he was trespassing there, but they also found trail cameras out on the county park ground, and they thought they belonged to him. And that's, like I said earlier, that's another no-no. So there was just I was like, this is a lot of drama out here just trying to kill a deer, hearing all these.
Good thing you killed one, man.
Yeah. Get in there and get out. Yeah. I do have one more doe tag, one more antlerless tag for in there, so I may try to fill that. But yeah, I was very happy. Day 1, day 2, I'm good.
Boom, boom.
Yes, sir. How about we jump into the question of the day?
All righty. The question of the day is probably brought to you by Cold Steel, professional hunting knives for real hunters.
Hey guys, this is Matt from New York. I want to start off by saying I love the podcast and keep up the great work.
Will do.
So my question of the day is, do you guys use ladder stands? Would you ever use ladder stands on private property? Or do you just strictly stick with hang-ons and box blinds? If you hate ladder stands, do you mind explaining why? Thanks, and good luck this season.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it. And Matt, if you're listening to this show, shoot us a message on the Rack Pack Facebook page and give me your address. We'll send you a DeerCast hat for submitting a question.
Nice. So we have some experience with ladder stands on the other lease in Ellsbury. So that's a piece of property that I hunt with Adam Wainwright on. And he's not there often. He might come for a couple of days at the end of his baseball season. But when we first set the property up, we put up all ladder stands because the guy was in the prime of his career. I just thought, we got to be safe. Better safe than sorry. Let's put up all these ladder stands. Sure. And I just don't want any accidents and mishaps. And this was really before, when we first started with that property, it was before you saw a lot of lifelines or safety lines. And so anyways, we went with the ladder stands, which by the way, I mean, since then I've learned, ladder stands can have their perils as well. I don't know if most people probably know the story of Ned Yost. He was the baseball manager that had ladder stands on his property in Georgia. And one of them, he ended up having a major accident. Ugh. So it can happen. What I have noticed is that, and maybe they've improved since then because I haven't bought any for the last probably 5 years, but you cannot climb in a ladder stand without it popping. Is what I have found. Right where because there's almost always a connection in the middle of the ladder where rod then goes to the tree. And that connection always seems to, in my experience, pop. Now, that's not to say that this is every ladder stand ever, but we had probably 4 or 5 on that property, and I never had any of them not pop when you climbed into them. And so I personally, that is one element that I just couldn't stand. Another thing that I really had a problem with when you're archery hunting, a lot of ladder stands have the rifle or the gun.
Yeah, the gun rail
in front, which is really tough to hunt around archery hunting. So that to me was a bit of a detractor. And there's ways to get around that stuff, but for gun hunting, it's not bad. I mean, hey, you got a rest in front of you. It's pretty ideal. But in my opinion, if I hadn't my choice, I'd go with a lock on and climbing sticks going up and a lifeline already in it so that you can be hooked the whole way up and down. That's my personal preference. It seems to be a lot quieter and a lot less popping, because even when you're in the ladder stand, shifting your weight, and I feel like I always had a lot of popping happening. So, that was my experience. That's been probably 4 or 5 years. But we have systematically taken all of our ladder stands out and replaced them all with lock-ons. What's your experience, Tim?
Matt is anti-pop.
Yes.
Ladder stands to me are the devil, and they for the reason, like the gun rail. If it's got a gun rail, it's totally in the way for bow hunting. Most of the places I'm hunting, to get a ladder stand into is problematic. Packing all those segments in, they're big and they're bulky unless you're putting it together like there at the tree, and even then it's still a lot of hauling. I also, like, when I'm in the stand, I like to be sucked up against the tree trunk. And I feel like in most ladder stands, if you stand up to shoot, because I almost never sit down and shoot. I'm always standing when I shoot. And so you're standing that out, at least the width of the seat platform away from the tree. And I feel like if a deer's off to your side or something, it's too easy for them to profile you. So I really don't like ladder stands. And then, like, when you're standing, you've only got that little, at least on the ladder stands I've hunted on, you've got like a little rung, like just a little platform to move around. You don't have the ability to rotate as much as you would on a traditional lock-on. So I've hunted out of them before, usually on like friends' properties that already had them hung, and I was a guest there, and that's what I hunted out of. But I don't like them for bow hunting.
I will say this: if you're taking, say, an older person that's maybe shooting a crossbow, or maybe it's a young child, or like, they are pretty nice, in that regard. If there's usually they're bigger, they feel a little more. You feel a little safer sitting in it because you're almost enclosed in a little box, so to speak. So, like, there are definitely positive attributes depending on your case, and if who you're taking or who's hunting with you. I could see potentially taking Cameron in a stand, like in a ladder stand, whereas I would into a lock on. So there's cases where I could see them being very, very useful.
Yep. Just like any tool in bow hunting, like, it's got its applications, and the stuff you give up and stuff that you gain as a result. Great question, Matt. Thanks for chiming in. And if folks want to add a question to the show, they can just hit the link in the show notes, and I'll take them right to the place where you record your message. Well, let's talk about the wildlife word, shall we?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Wildlife Word is brought to you by the Stanley Sportsman Collection of insulated drink containers. Get yours for those chilly November sits. And you get them in Mossy Oak Bottomland, Breakup Country, and Blaze Orange.
I used my Bottomland one 2 days ago. We took Cameron out for a hunt with us, and we had it full and ready to go. So when you take a kid, as you know, like, you got to pack so many extra things.
Yes. And so I got my daughter the Trigger Action mug, and she likes the little squeezy button that you have to push to get, and she left it in my truck for like 2 days, and I was thirsty. I was just getting done with a run. I was thirsty, and I found it, and it had like some of her Kool-Aid or something in it, and it was still cold. And it was like, this was back a month or so ago, and it was still warm out. I was like, nice. And it was a nice surprise to get a cool beverage in my truck. I didn't expect that.
That same Trigger one is what Cameron uses, and then I had the new Bottomland one, kind of a refill scenario. So they're nice. I mean, I like them,
especially with kids, because they don't always keep things vertically. Like, I found this bottle laying on its side in the rear seat of my truck, and thankfully it hadn't leaked. Like, the carpet was dry, so I appreciate the the leak proof aspect of it.
Easy for you to say.
Not so much. I'm so tired. You were making fun of me a couple days ago because I was in your office, and you're like, "Dude, what's up with your eye?" My eye was twitching. I was like, I'm not trying to come on to you. I'm just really tired.
Sure, Tim.
It's exactly what it looked like.
It wasn't off-putting at all.
No, you asked me to keep doing it, which that was off-putting in itself.
I'm trying to be serious with you, but I can't stop staring at you.
I'm really distracted right now.
I was like, "Are you okay?"
I'm okay. Not great, but I'm okay.
Yeah, ditto.
Okay, so
I'm fixing to be poor or bad here in a couple more days.
Yeah, I think we should just live our lives by the DeerCast rating categories.
Yeah, no doubt.
Just depends on the barometer. Okay, the scraping ability in a white. So first off, scraping happens year round. It's just something whitetails do to communicate. We see it obviously more in the fall. The scraping ability in a whitetail seems to improve, however, relative to their A, eye socket diameter, which is important. B, their canine tooth length. C, their pumpkin gland size, which is a possibility. Or D, their maturity.
Well, I would think it's D, maturity.
I think you're right. I mean, all those other are they're plausible, but it is their maturity.
Could be pumpkin gland size.
So the size of the scrape, the complexity of the scrape, the frequency of scrapes, those things all tend to increase as a buck matures.
Yeah, and man, my scrapes are just getting hammered lately. And some of these deer that we're after, these nicer deer that we're after, it's just amazing. I mean, you finally get, in summer you might be getting distant picture that might be cruising through, but this is the best time of year for trail camera, images. You just get that best close up, high quality imagery right in front of the cameras. I just love it, and we're getting some really good ones right now.
I got a personal question for you.
Let's hear it.
You don't have to answer it if you don't want to. Do you ever take a wee-wee into a scrape?
Yeah, I just did a couple of days ago,
morning.
and then it got hammered that night by a pretty big deer. I mean, we hear this debate a lot. Will you pee off your tree stand? Will you, bottle it up? Like, I really don't think it bothers them personally at all. Like, it's just another weird scent that they're trying to show their dominance for.
Yeah, I did it a couple weeks ago. I had a friend in town hunting, and I peed into a scrape. The first
cross streams.
Thankfully, we did not, because it was a female friend.
Oh,
Ew. What are you doing over there?
Female friend, I don't believe it.
We were in the blind for 5 minutes, and a spike buck came right up, right to the scrape, checked it, hung around there for a few minutes, and then walked off. It was like magic. So
it works.
It does. Although I will have to say, taking a leak just out of your stand just to void your bladder, it's a miracle. Like, it's incredible. It's like 20 feet of stream.
Did it yesterday.
Yeah, isn't that great?
Because of that micro factor I take, mine looks like Mountain Dew.
Yeah, same here.
All right, we better end on that note.
Let's do that. So, so the next episode, we have no idea who's going to be on. But
no, might just be Tim and I.
It could be. Hopefully, we're talking about your buck kill.
We better not schedule it around that.
You're not a doucher.
All right, let's shut her down, Timmy.
Let's do it. All right, everyone. Well, hope you're having a great season so far. If not, just keep checking DeerCast. Make sure you're timing your hunts right, and stick around for the next episode.
We hope to see you guys on the Rack Pack over on Facebook.
Temperatures are going to be dropping. Perfect conditions for the skinny field. Got to focus on those afternoon hunts. Northwest Tree Stand, 5 p.m.
It's the easiest decision you'll make this season. Get ahead of your game with DeerCast.
Until next time, peace out.
I'm going to go take a nap in my office right now. Just crawl up under my desk and pull a George Costanza.
Nice. All right.
You guys want to do a tag?
We're doing it right now.
Oh, we are? Okay. Well, my wife's staring at me. She needs to leave our house. So.
You're getting the glower look.
This is the door that she needs to leave
She can walk past. It'd make a great tag.
Walk past.
I'm going to be the bunch of things my hair.
Oh, okay. Just be doing a bunch of things.
There
she is. This
Hi,
is
Miranda.
her.
The tag is Matt getting in trouble. Boom.
All right.
Happy birthday, Lola.
Yep. Thank you. See ya.
We're adding new videos every week, so make sure to click that subscribe button and check out all of our amazing content. This episode of DoD TV was brought to you by Bass Pro Shops in Cabela's.